Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. I'm Jonathan Bridges, and this is Teddy. Say hi, Teddy. And you're tuning into the live Tennr refresh event, where we're focused on context, control, and coordination for large-scale healthcare operations. We're going to do a deep dive into how Tennr is helping providers drive down patient delays, increasing yield, drive down denials, growing revenue, and reducing that drag of manual labor nobody likes. It's basically our question to ask, why does it take so long? Why is it so difficult to get a patient seen in the U.S. healthcare system? So saddle up for a look into how Tennr wrangles orders end-to-end for large-scale healthcare operations, and for a deep dive into Tennr's eligibility and benefits product. The only 100% complete, there goes the hat, only 100% complete active coverage, eligibility, payer lookup, and benefits investigations product out there. So hopefully by the end of this hour, we're going to be friends with benefits. Investigations. Zoomers all across this great nation, welcome to the Tennr Refresh event, live from New York City. Trey? Diego? Trey? It's your cue, guys. Teddy, have you seen Trey and Diego?
What the hell does that guy do here? It's incredible. Jonathan, thank you so much for introducing us. Thank you so much for having us again. We want to welcome you all to the Tennr Spring Refresh. We're so happy to have you. We've got the Aperols. It's 38 degrees outside. This was not how we planned it, but we're still happy to do it. I wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Trey Holterman. I'm one of the co-founders here and CEO of Tennr.
And I'm Diego, also one of the co-founders, Chief Product Officer, and I'll be walking us through some demos today.
And we're reporting live from our old office up here in Manhattan, New York. And just to quickly go over what we're talking about at a very, very high level, we've got some guests that we're super excited about. We've got some new products we're super excited about. But at a high level, the way that we like to think about what we do is automating as much work as possible in the pre-visit patient process, which means basically taking all the documentation and all the work that needs to be done when a patient is received via the fax, email, e-prescribe, you name it, and making sure that all the work is done right so that we're driving down denials, driving up conversion, and reducing the amount of work that needs to be done by humans on either end. To talk a little bit more about that, we've got some incredible guests, the wonderful one and only Rob Bovey, the VP of Operations from Better Night. I'm sure it's not 38 degrees in San Diego. We've got Ryan Radcliffe coming in from King Drug out in Kentucky. And finally, to top it all off, the man that's hard to contain, but we're so lucky to have him, the CEO of one of the largest and fastest growing infusions operations in the US is Ben Newberg. So we're so lucky to have these three, and we're so excited to have you guys here. But very first, before we get into all of that, the quick primer. What are we talking about when we say the pre-visit patient process? We like to talk about the steps and the work that goes into it. Now, it's one thing to put it on a slide. We wanted to really quickly show it from the patient perspective in Tennr today, how quickly we can go and get a patient end to end and processed. So without further ado, Diego, are we good to start some work?
Yeah, of course. And thank you all for making the time to join us today. I know you're super busy, but I'm really excited to show you how this pre-visit patient process actually looks like with Tennr. Now, before I hop into the demo, I've seen hundreds of process reviews, and no matter how a practice is doing things today, the one thing I know for sure is that getting a patient from point A to point B is complex, it's arduous, it's laborious, and all those other words that mean not easy. And so one of the core tenets of our product and our approach is really to make things simple and shift the process from a state of doing to a mode of optional reviewing. So let me show you what I actually mean by that. I've already gone ahead and queued up a patient for us to work end to end in all those touch points in Tennr. And so this very first task here is about separating the document into its respective patients. Our referring provider might have sent us a batch of referrals, and so my task before Tennr would have been to look at each page, see what patient is on it, use Adobe Acrobat or something like that to chop up the document, but here Tennr's already done the work for us.
So this is that situation where you might get a 100-page document with 10 patients on it, or 100 documents all for one patient.
Exactly. So here I'm just in review mode. I'm looking at what Tennr has said is Alex Apple versus Alexander Collins. And we can see here everything looks right. So I'll hit that button, everything looks right. Immediately, I'm taken on to this next task, which appears to be an eligibility check. We're gonna go deep dive into this later in the show. So for now, I'm just gonna hit everything looks right.
It's one of the features that we're so excited to go really, really deep on, so let's just skip through it and we'll come right back to it.
This next task is all about identifying what the page type is according to your document labels. This is going to be super important downstream when we're doing that quality assurance, making sure we have all the high-level documents relevant for that patient to get reimbursed downstream, but we're taking care of that now. Tennr has already pre-labeled these, and I'm just passively checking here.
When you say you're open for business and documentation is getting sent in, it's never just like, oh, here's a clean order with everything you need, right? We're getting labs, we're getting notes, we're getting everything, auth submissions all coming through. That makes sense.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next task here. This next task is qualifications here. So this is that downstream I was kind of talking about of what those tag pages are going to be feeding into. Really, we're trying to make sure that we have all the high-level documentation as well as the clinical criteria that's needed to pass. And so here in this state, right, we're offering this bird's eye view where I can see that this specific guideline failed for a reason, right, that is explained here right in the interface. So it should be super quick, super easy to see this is not qualified. I'm going to go ahead here and say everything looks right, and it should queue up a kind of missing information request.
Absolutely. And we spent, just a reminder, right, we are not going through every little thing sort of end to end here. I like to highlight sort of one feature at a time at Refresh. We're just trying to basically show the high level step process here.
Yeah, so this one's pretty cool. Now we're extracting the patient information, the payer information, and the provider information. And so what I do here is, whether that information exists on page 4 or page 12, Tennr is showing us the highlights on the exact page where it's at, taking me straight to there. So we jumped to page 3 here to see these ICD-10 codes extracted, and I would follow a similar process for all of this type of information.
So instead of like going through a 20-page document, trying to find every little data field that we need to make sure that we're keeping our ERP, our EMRs, PMS systems all up to date, just review it, say everything looks right, and everything should just happen automatically downstream from there.
100%.
Sweet. And now the reality is this is just simply not what it actually, like most people are not having one person go end to end with one patient, right? You have so much volume coming in, so many different documents coming in, and so many patients and so many people that are needed to actually like approve that the work is being done right. And so there's just this sort of like mess of work that needs to be done when you're actually saying, look, we'll take it however it's going to come on all this different, from all these different sources coming in sort of all at once. Can we look at like the sort of multi-patient and the like when a bunch of this work is coming in and how it actually gets done at scale?
Yeah, so we should have queued up multiple patients here. I'm just going to keep processing this work, and it'll be loaded up directly into this screen. So we're waiting for those to come in at this moment.
So we're going to basically queue up the way like a real business would actually operate with tons of documents coming in. Might be different stages, different steps, and different people that need to approve each and every step going on right here. But you're just going to sit in, lock in, and crank out some tasks.
Right, and we don't know when those documents are coming in. They could come in the morning, in between the day, and so here they should just, let me give a little refresh there. No tasks yet.
We do it live. We're queuing some work up behind the scenes, trying to make sure we have all documentation coming in. This show is done live. Last time we had so few hiccups that, in fact, people refused to believe that it was being recorded live, but it is live. And the team is up late, and we are trying to make sure that everything happens all once. And there you go. It's coming in.
All right, here we go. Now we've just received this batch of documents. Now we can go through and show that experience. We talked about reducing that cognitive load, staying on one task. It allows me to review this work much, much faster. So we're going to be going down this tag page document one, right? Everything looks right there. We're pulling a different set of information for this referral here. everything looks right. So I'm going to keep going through and,
All right, I
and
feel like
processing
you're
these
gonna get
patients.
overwhelmed just tagging pages here, just going through and getting everything done automatically. This is exactly what I mean, where once you start doing these things at an incredible scale, the tables turn and the complexity really like amounts in terms of how you actually orchestrate that work and how you maintain control of your operations. One of the guests that I'm so excited that we brought in today is one of the best wranglers of a large team running large processes. That is the one and only Mr. Rob Bovey. Rob, are you there?
I am here. Thanks for having me.
Rob, so good to see you. So good to have you again. And very, very grateful for your time. But Rob, one of the cool things that we always spend a lot of time chatting about is that you have a deep background actually in supply chain, and it's very sort of evident just working with you. But how do you think about like this sort of supply chain view of processing a bunch of patients being sent into Better Night every day?
Yeah, so it's the order processing is not different from supply chain really at all. I mean, in a perfect world, you'll have, let's just say, a full truckload, right? So you can deliver one order from point A all the way to point B. But in our business, that is not common. So, essentially, you've got an order that comes through, and there are certain decision points along the way that the order stops. Something needs to be done. Oftentimes, rather than the order flowing forward in a linear manner, it even has to go backwards. So it's very, very similar to the complex delivery structure of the supply chain.
And in any supply chain, like the worst thing that can happen is a bottleneck or a backlog. When you're dealing with patients, when we're talking about orders, one, how do you define that backlog, and what does it mean when you have a backlog at 0?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, each organization defines it differently, but you come up with a common SLA. It might be 1 day, it might be half a day, might be 3 days, whatever your organization is set up to do. I have recently experienced a 0 backlog for several months, and what it means to us is we can provide not only feedback to our referrals that yes, we received the order, yes, we're going to process it, but to our patients. And the important part of that is, the patient becomes engaged with your company right away. Oftentimes, your company, this is the first time that they've experienced, a relationship with you. So you can start that relationship right away and really help to get patients, engaged with you, and it really helps conversion rates quite a bit.
Which is like the difference of experience for a patient is like they're hearing about Better Night, they're hearing about what you guys are going to do for them, and then they're getting contacted 30 minutes later by Better Night instead of 3 weeks later when they're like, maybe I want to work with them, maybe I want to do that service, or maybe not, right?
It does, and it instills a level of confidence in the patient that you're engaged with their journey as well.
Yeah. I cannot tell you how many people we talk to, they're just like amazed and surprised at like how long it usually takes, right? Specialists getting sent patients, and then you don't hear from them for 3 weeks, and so they think it must not actually be that important, or very few actually realize, the business maybe just doesn't have it super dialed in quite yet. When you talk about, dialing in orders, that's obviously, obviously complex and obviously leads to all these issues. But talk about sort of running the ship from making sure that you have the people doing the right work and not tripping over each other, and making sure that you can sort of orchestrate different work streams. I know sort of with Tennr things have changed, and we'll show you that. So can you talk about sort of like the before world of like what it used to be like when you would have a backlog and how you would like move people around?
Yeah, so pre-Tennr, you would, for whatever reason, EMR goes down, weather events, internet goes down, you would experience a backlog, and you'd have, any responsible organizations got the right amount of people for each department for their typical workflow. And pre-Tennr, we would just have to rally the entire troops to get together to process these orders. But what would happen is their duties now would be on the back burner, right? So we'd get these orders processed through, and then they would go to the next step, and that step's behind. So you have to rally everybody to that. Then the next step's behind, and you'd have to rally everyone to that. And it would often take weeks to get back to current because it was just a scramble from step to step.
That makes a ton of sense. Rob, thank you so much for your time. We absolutely love solving your problems. And one day maybe you'll get a call and solve one of mine. Anyways,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rob. And Rob's already seen this view a million times, but it's actually the administrative side of Workspace, which is, okay, all this work is flowing in. Who's approving it? Tennr's getting work ready to be approved, but how do we make sure that each task is actually still being approved and being done in a really timely manner? Diego, you've got it up on the screen?
Yeah, so this view is showing all the tasks that I walked through before and showing some really cool high-level analytics over it, right? Really keying in on average processing time per day over the past month, so you can see how things are progressing. But I can see here, how many tasks we've completed today, how many tasks are left to be reviewed, and when I'm looking at this, I can see that this confirm patient payer provider information type of task has a longer average processing time. And so
that step of the whole process is effectively like our bottleneck right now. Everything is taking a couple of minutes here and there for the actual human to get to, but this one is taking 50, it looks like.
Yeah, so what I can actually do is I can help out here a little bit and add some people to help. So I'm gonna add Jackie, I'm gonna add Khaled, and I'm going to add Anastasia.
And so now in that same single pane of glass that you were showing me before, they are now going to get this task that was leading to the bottleneck and presumably assist and drive down the average processing time there as well.
Yeah, so we can actually see this time going down in real time. We're getting real-time updates here and seeing how long it took to actually review the task, how long it took before the person got to reviewing the task, and how long it actually took for Tennr to do the work.
Oh, interesting. All right, I was just going to take a second to move down those averages, but you do get to see in the top left those tasks just getting eliminated, and boy, do you love to see it. Very, very cool. One of the other things that I might just highlight is in that sort of like 3-bar, we're now showing how long Tennr actually took to process, how long we waited on a human. And if you go to like the bar under average processing time there, 19 minutes and 7 seconds, right? That average is determined by the 3 most important things, which is how long did Tennr actually do work? How long was that work waiting to be validated by a human? And then how long did the team actually spend validating? And so the experience of all the work here is about minimizing the time that you have things sitting in a backlog waiting for human review and minimizing the amount of labor that it takes to actually make sure that everything was done right and keep it going. Very, very cool. Thank you, Diego, for showing that, and thank you for jumping right into it. We've got a lot of coordination that needs to be done internally, but even if you're running the most dialed in, most well controlled, most smooth operations, coordinating all your resources internally, when you're a provider, you got to get paid by payors, by third parties. And so you're dealing with this external entity that has to be coordinated with. And that creates all this sort of like additional work and sort of like contextual confusion. And so we want to talk very, very in-depth about the difficulties that pop up with payer mapping, with running eligibility and doing a complete benefit investigation. To do that, we've got him reporting live from Kentucky, the one and only Mr. Ryan Radcliffe. Ryan, are you there? And Ryan, great to have you. So excited to be here. I really quickly want to just ask, how long have you been working in the industry out there? And Ryan, really quick, make sure you're not on mute there.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ryan, there you are.
It's definitely a confirmation that this is live.
Yeah, we are very much live. And Ryan, we're so live that I hesitated to make the joke. Ryan works at King Drug, and I was saying, when I met Ryan, I said, Ryan, I knew a guy in college named King Drug, and nobody knew what he did. But what do you at King Drug specialize in?
Okay, so I'm the administrator. I run day-to-day operations for King Drug Home Care. We've been in business for a little over 50 years. We are full service DME, everything except ventilators.
Beautiful. And talked about like the different regions that you guys serve, and what's unique about the fact that you have patients coming in from all these different areas with a bunch of different payers that you have to deal with.
So we service about 25 large counties in Kentucky. Each county is roughly, it averages out to about 500 square miles. So, I mean, it's a pretty large area. It's a really rural. There's a lot of different payers in the mix. Issues that we run into, with like our documents coming in from hospital discharges and different places. They'll often list Anthem as the insurance, and that could be Anthem, Medicaid, Medicare, commercial. We run into kind of issues on trying to figure out which plan that is. And I mean, it can take time. The patients aren't always the easiest to get a hold of. And thankfully, I mean, we've got people that have been doing it for several years in the industry that can often look at the numbers on the insurance and kind of narrow it down. But like I said, it takes time.
Absolutely. And Ryan, one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is that you have a truly, world-class, you share obviously, but truly world-class on your denial rates, on clean claims, and write-offs. And I'd love to just like generally, you guys have optimized so much of the work on the front end. What does it mean when you have confidence in sort of the eligibility and benefits, the payer mapping, this stuff all on the front end before you submit the claim? What does it mean to have confidence in that before you go and
actually? Oh, it's huge. It plays a big part. We often get teased by our referral sources that we request a lot of documentation up front versus other people. But we tell them, that minimizes our denial rates, and we're going to be in the industry a lot longer than our competition, which we've seen a lot of payers, a lot of providers in our area have dropped out over the past couple of years. And that's due to their denials. I mean, they get bombarded. And then once you get audited by Medicare, let's just say, if you don't pass the first round, then they hit you with a second round and a third round, and it just keeps going. And it honestly is bankrupt smaller players in our area.
And when you decide to do that work, like what are the trade-offs that a team usually has to make when you're saying, look, we're going to ask for all the documentation up front, and we're going to sort of pour over it?
What we have to do, we kind of break it down. Our intake team specializes on certain parts of the process, and we have certain intake people that are only qualified for certain equipment. And as far as the whole breakdown on the insurance, and I mean, we work the claims all the way through. After document wrangler part, it goes to somebody in intake, and then that person takes pretty much ownership all the way through confirmation. And that helps us if we start seeing denials on certain pieces of equipment. We know who's worked it, and we can train those people. But I mean, that causes problems because you get people that are specialized, and if they're out or turned over, you got to have a backup plan and process.
No, absolutely. It's always fascinating to me to like see the way that sort of organizations like handle all the complexity, specializing, and sort of narrowing the scope of what people can work on and things like that. And it makes sense, and I get absolutely why you do it. And Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your week down there. I am actually getting called nonstop by Jonathan. I don't know what the hell's going on down where he's at, but I don't know. We got anything from Jonathan backstage?
Trey, Diego, you guys got it? I think you're up. I think it's your cue.
Okay, this guy is hopelessly lost. If I don't, I'm going to need to deal with this. And as we talk about eligibility benefits, nobody else better to do it than our newest teammate, Bruno Dos Santos. Bruna, please sub me out here. Thank you very much. All right.
Can't forget the drink.
Hey, Bruna, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? So,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm Bruno Dos Santos. I recently joined Tennr, actually this week, so really just throwing me into the fire. But I come from DME. I was over at Acceleron running operations and sales, and previously was running a national program at Adapt.
Awesome. Well, what we're looking at on the screen here is about to be this in-depth eligibility and benefits that I promised earlier in the show. So can you kind of talk about some of those complexities about selecting the correct payer? Because we know how important that is.
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, it's extremely important. Ryan mentioned it earlier as well. It's a common headache that you're not getting the information up front. You're not getting all of it easily accessible. You know, insurance is confusing, even for people who've been in the industry for years. You're looking at Aetna and it's Aetna Better Health or Medicare or Aetna Commercial. And then if you throw in Blue Cross Blue Shield into the mix, now we're really talking about a complicated matrix of deciding which insurance we should be billing based on the counties, the state. Is it Blue Card? We're billing the local plan. And training a rep to do that and do it accurately every time is extremely difficult. And then you get things like this, what we have, where it just says Blue Cross New Jersey. Does that mean that it's Horizon? Does that mean it's a Blue Card plan? That's what they default for all Blue Cross because the center is in New Jersey. We're not always getting accurate data from the referrals. Commercial payer, Aetna, that's all it's saying. And so being able to then, map it, you can talk to a little bit more of what's happening, but of saying, all right, here's all the list of insurances based on the DME's or the provider's list of insurance. What do we think this is? And then factoring in the patient's state. So you have it up here, but.
Yeah, so based on all that context you mentioned, our models are actually reading the document, looking for those extra pieces of context to then, make the correct selection on what our provider's payer mapping looks like. And so here, have we made the correct selection here?
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll say everything looks right and move on to the next phase, which is this eligibility check. You kind of want to speak to that?
Yeah. Running eligibility isn't as simple as just clicking a button saying, yes, it's verified. A lot of times that means you're going into different portals. All right, for this payer, we go into Navinet. For this one, it's Availity. This one, we have to go into the actual insurance provider's portal itself. And so Tennr is going in here and very clean cut, same format, which is really easy to train to as well, giving you the if the plan is active, if it's a commercial payer, and then also giving you some of the deductible or copay information up front there. And so we're verifying all of that in a way that's really easy to read, and you're getting the same information every time without having to go to a spreadsheet, figure out what plan you're looking at, and then where you should be going to verify it.
Yeah, so we've run all that. Tennr has done that work for us. We got the green check flag active coverage. If we needed to look at the patient document again just for another double check, we could do so here. But we're ready to move on to benefits.
Perfect.
Everything looks right. And we'll see it move on to the benefits check here. Of course, that would take longer in practice, but for the demo's sake, we move straight to this interface. And you want to speak to benefits?
Yeah. If you've ever manually verified benefits, it's a huge time suck. I remember being on the phone for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just trying to get to somebody who could tell me if this patient has active coverage for something as simple as a breast pump. And to the point that I became my habit to just start from day one just saying Apple, 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 until I broke the system, and eventually it would get me to a human, because I didn't have 45 minutes to sit there for them to say, yes, this is covered, or no, it's a grandfathered plan, it's not covered. And then, getting all of the additional information, because now you got to a human after you were on the phone for 30 minutes, but you still need to collect if there's prior authorization, if there's deductible, if there's copay, and all of that information to be able to then accurately tell the patient what are you going to be financially responsible for, so they can make informed decisions about their own care. So we're going in here. There is a call being made. Tennr's automatically calling and going through all of those things, the determining the coverage criteria, the coordination of benefits, deductibles, copays, insurance, prior authorization, and any other clinical requirements that may be necessary to appropriately bill this product.
That's exactly right. And we try to make the flags there super easy to see. We see auth is required, active coverage, surface more information, and if we also want to see what actually happened on that transcript, we could scroll through here and see what was kind of mentioned on that phone call for some extra context. And once again, still able to reference that patient document. All in one easy screen. I think we went through the whole process successfully, so we'll hit everything looks right here.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. That could take at least 30 minutes if you're really trying to go through and do all that. It's really become such a simple process, and you're not wasting hours on hold, rather than being able to quickly go through and verify all of them. But looks like Trey is off the phone, so I will switch back over with him.
Awesome. Thank you, Bruna.
Absolutely.
God, we did it. You know, Aperol Spritz is not a stress drink, let me tell you that. But I'm trying my best out here. Jonathan is okay. You're not allowed to make a kid sit on a horse. He's never sat on a horse, apparently. But he's doing his best. Speaking of wrangling chaos, we've got one of the guests that I am so freaking excited to talk to. I met Ben, and I was immediately mesmerized. So I think you all will be too. This is the CEO of one of the fastest growing infusion specialty pharmacy operations in the country. That is the one and only Ben Newberg. Ben, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
How you doing, Trey?
Ben, you're in New York. You're supposed to be in New York at least, but you ran away to Florida. I had an extra cup for you. Really quickly, can you just tell me, how did you get into the world of infusions? It's a great story.
So I got into the world of infusion. Me and my brother, my mom was on the rheumatological infusion for rheumatoid arthritis, and it was Orencia. And we were taking her to the hospital, which was a long commute. And then there was intake and discharge. The whole thing didn't make sense. So me being in the jewelry business, my brother being in the construction business, having an adjacent arm to an urgent care that he had, we decided that we were going to go and build a private infusion suite just for my mom and figure it out as we go. Did that because we felt that my mom deserved that kind of level of treatment, being that she gave birth to us and put us through school, so we might as well just give something back. And we built the facility, one room, and from there, people just started coming off the street and kept growing and growing and growing. And 5 years later, we're about 30 plus infusion suites now, maybe even more. I know we have a couple slated to open this month and next month in multiple states, but that's a quick synopsis of how we got into the infusion business and why it's so important to us.
Oh, it's incredible. Every time I look away, there's like a new Thrival location. And I know that's probably what you're doing out there in Florida. But let me ask you this. You really approached the business from basically first principles. You ran and dealt with, you handled every single patient in the early days yourself and really approached the business from sort of first principles. What makes dealing with specialty pharmaceuticals and the eligibility and benefits process so high stakes?
Yeah, specific to this space, the value, the cost basis value of these medications are high, and what that does is create a little bit more regulation and scrutiny on top of those medications, and the visibility of it is a little bit more defined through a magnifying glass. So that being said, you really want to make sure those benefits investigations, along with those prior authorizations and everything else that's leading up to the treatment cycle of a patient, is intact and full. Documentation has to be precise so that it's proving medical necessity. And the most important part of the benefits investigation is that defines what you're going to receive as payment. When that EOB comes, you'll have something to match it up to. And if you don't have that exact amount, then you can go and ask the insurance company for more to meet the requirement that they have contracted with your organization.
Just out of curiosity, like operationally, what's been the hardest part of getting ThriveWell to the place that it is today and growing as fast as you've been growing?
So the hardest challenges we find is there's a lot to unravel there. I would say the hardest part is keeping up with growth. The inefficiencies around our space in general are evident by gaps showing themselves daily in every single area. Understanding where those gaps come and making sure that you can fill the gap by not creating fractures or any breaks in the system that you've created to create an efficient workflow to get patients from script to chair in a timely manner so that they can stay on continuity care to reduce their hospitalizations is ideally what the format is created for. And one of the other major things is payers understanding and seeing that workload that goes into it and understanding that there's a lot more value in it than just a short time of processing.
Excellent, thank you, Ben. Ben, to queue up our next segment where we're going to be looking deep into some of the language model work that we've done recently, can you just talk for a second about what these infusion orders look like that you guys get sent in, and how the actual, like you said, script to chair, but what the actual scripts like kind of look like?
So it's interesting, our formulation of scripts it varies many different ways. We still get traditional faxes. We still have doctor's offices that don't even know how to fill out a script. The doctor might be in his 70s, and not in a bad way, but there are patients that they have, and the doctor's in his 70s and he's still handwriting a script. So we get it in multiple different formats. We'll get a handwritten script. We have eScribe, which is more popular now, obviously. A lot of the hospital systems directly send us their referrals, and it's through eScribe. And then we have a web platform that was created for scripts that, helps sort it out. Prior to Tennr, we were trying to tackle the handwriting and fax legibility of a script. And that was a difficult process for us. And once Tennr came on and sorting through those things, and the process you guys have created is pretty solid for advancing our process through. But yeah, it's a challenge when you're getting scripts, especially the handwritten scripts, but the eScribes, the other ones, they siphon through, but getting multiple different forms of scripts is complex at times, yeah, because the progress notes follow accordingly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Ben, let's hope that you also make it to your 70s, but not in a bad way. So thank you for...
Thanks, Trey.
I'm just kidding. Anyway, but honestly, Ben, you teed us up for the last section that we want to do, which is our ML Corner, where we focus on one of these tasks that, to your point, like reading this handwriting and reading it in the structure that orders come in through when you're talking about a drug and dosing a drug is incredibly complex. So to really talk about some of the complexity and how we were able to build a solution that works, we're subbing out Diego in for Spencer Paul. Spencer Paul is on the machine learning team here at Tennr. He was a few years back in one of the top guys out of the Stanford AI lab, and so putting him on camera is a high-risk maneuver, but he was also an incredible debate club champion, so do not try to disagree with this guy. You will lose. So excited to have you, Spencer Paul. So Spencer, let's just talk at a high level. Why fundamentally, when I receive like an order for a drug or a device that's going to be dispensed some amount of time over time, like why can I not just plug in ChatGPT and get a result that works nicely?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of information you have to extract, things like dates, things like the dosage period, what route are you administering the infusion with, what is the unit of measure for that dosage, how do I calculate the correct unit of measure given a patient's weight, and kind of all of these different variables where, a language model might be able to extract these things, but then you have to think and reason about how to combine them. A lot of the times with infusions, you're creating multiple orders because in one order, you might have the dosing interval vary, or you might step up the dose to a higher amount if you're going from an induction to a maintenance phase. So you really need a reasoning model there to be able to figure out more complicated things like that ChatGPT couldn't. But there's a layer on top of that that's a little bit harder as well, which is you also need to do math, something that language, hence the name language models, are not very good at. So you need to be able to kind of like break out of the model reasoning cycle and be able to perform some of those calculations just using external tools that the model isn't going to be able to do on its own. And I think the last thing that I'll highlight too is there's missing information a lot of the time in these orders, I think like what was mentioned earlier. And so you also need some kind of expertise around the drug and how it's been administered in the past to supplement maybe something that wasn't explicitly written on the page. So we're really trying to combine kind of all of those things to make what is like the most powerful assistant at reading some of these orders.
Okay, I caught a good chunk of that. Can we actually see an example and talk through the example of sort of like how, you're jumping in from, I mean, what you're describing, right, is you're using a model for what models are good at, which is pulling and inferring from language. But fundamentally, you don't have all the information, and you can't make all the like a language model is not the right tool to make all the calculations. So you're jumping in and jumping out. Can you talk through like an actual example here?
Totally.
Sort of like where those complexities hit the road at scale?
So here we have an order for Actemra, but as is the case with a lot of fax packets that come in, this might have been stapled behind a page, and so we miss the corner here. But what we do have is the generic name of the drug. And so this is kind of like the first pause point where the model extracted something, but this isn't a drug in the EMR. Like, what should we do? And we'll actually figure out what that mapping is, what all of the variants maybe could have been on that, to make sure that at least when we're proceeding with the rest of the extraction, the order is valid and correct. So now I'm going to scroll down to this kind of order section here. Checkbox kind of written, messy handwriting as well, standard on kind of all of these forms. And you see that we have 4 milligrams per kilograms for the first 4 weeks for 2 doses, and then you have to up that amount to 8 milligrams per kilogram. So this actually needs to be 2 separate orders. So you're extracting this information and then having to reason about how do I break these cards up into kind of valid orders. And the complexity grows, and sometimes you might see that you actually administer on weeks 0, 2, and 6, and then you would have to break it up into another card because you have to include a fixed interval within these orders. And so so
it's not even just like, hey, I'm taking this order, this is the amounts, and good. It's like you literally have to be able to infer based off the way the referring provider describes the treatment, how many actual orders it should map to.
Exactly.
Got it.
And sometimes they don't even write all of it out explicitly for you. Like here, we have the dosage amount and every 4 weeks, but we have to infer that means they're going to be taking it over a 2-month period.
And it doesn't even actually say how many milligrams, it just says milligrams per kilograms, but then we got the weight in pounds.
So we got the weight in pounds on the left-hand side, and we'll do that conversion, and then we extracted that the unit of measure is milligrams per kilograms, and when we create the order now, it will actually do the math to make sure that you're calculating the correct amount.
Oh, that's very, very cool. One other thing that I kind of want to highlight, we talked about this in ML Corner last refresh. We talked about ICD-10 code extraction, and not to put you on blast here, Spencer, but when you joined on and we were looking at all the best research that had been done on being able to infer diagnosis from unstructured information, like the best we were seeing was like 60 or 70%. And now we're clocking high 90s for ICD-10 code extraction. Can you just give a little bit of a hint of how you were able to get that outcome, that result, without spilling total trade secrets?
So basically, what people were doing in academia, they were trying to go from these narrative descriptions to diagnostic codes. There's over 70,000 of them, so you're picking from a very large sample, things that are highly, highly specific. And the reason they were failing is because they never grounded that in any sort of context. At Tennr, we obviously have all the contextual information around what we're qualifying and what the order is. So we were able to shrink that search space into what people actually cared about, as opposed to just kind of attacking the problem abstractly from an academic lens. And I think that led us to very practical and powerful results.
So basically you're able to say, look, if we're qualifying, Actemra, some complex drug, we know what insurance is going to be looking for on the diagnosis code space, and so you can limit then the space that the narratives have to search. You're limiting the space of search on the diagnosis side when you go and look at the narratives. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes kind of both ways as well, where you might get an ICD code and the name of the drug might be ambiguous or really messy doctor's handwriting, but you can also then use kind of that information along with the diagnostic description and code to then fix what other mistakes you made previously.
I didn't prep him on that question or answer. He just will never give me a straight answer on it, so I figured I'd do it live on camera, force him to explain it, and he did. He usually says, Trey, it's too complicated, and then moves on. So thank you very much, Spencer. That was, I think, the best eye contact we've ever made. So I absolutely I enjoyed it. I had a blast. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. And thank you all for joining us on this, your lovely Thursday morning or maybe afternoon, depending on where you are. We are so grateful to have you here. And by the way, we always just touch like a small little fraction of what we do and try to go deep. We tried to go deep in what it looks like to process large volumes and coordinate many people approving work and a ton of different processes that are being automated through Tennr. And then we also looked at like, how do you actually run eligibility and benefits at scale? And so we didn't have time to kind of go through everything and do a full sort of like true end-to-end Tennr demo. So if you want to learn more, if you want to see that stuff, the website is always the right place to go to. That's Tennr.com. If you want to join us and help make this refresh a little bit better, please fill out that card. I got a new pair of shoes last time because so much of the feedback was that Trey needs a new pair of shoes. So you can really impact the show. We've got something incredible that we're cooking up for summer. It's going to look different. We run out of this lease in a couple months, so we're almost there. Thank you all so much for joining us. Hope you have a great day. Thank you for being here, and God bless America.